Welcome to Inside the Mind of a College Admissions Officer. Before we start, I'd like to introduce Jamie. She's here as our office manager. Feel free to talk to her after the workshop, or you can talk to myself. Tonight we're going to take a tour inside the mind of an admissions officer to help you understand more about how this process works. My goal is to demystify the college decision-making process and take you into the room where it happens, as they say in Hamilton. How many of you are parents of juniors and sophomores? How about freshmen? Any parents of middle schoolers? Okay, welcome. Well, my name is Jenny Umhofer. I've worked in admissions for over 10 years and as a consultant for over 9 years. I've reviewed about 10,000 applications, both as an admissions officer and as a consultant. I also happen to be a parent of 2 children, 4th and 5th grade. So I really come from the perspective of a parent as well as a consultant. So my background in admissions started at UCLA and Caltech, and I also worked at Scripps College in their admissions office.
So at UCLA, I was mentioning earlier that I worked in the School of the Arts and Architecture as an admissions officer there, but I would recruit artists, visual, performing, all kinds of artists to our programs, but I would also read about 1,000 applications every year. And each application would take me about 5 minutes.
Oh boy.
So that was with 50,000 applications. So with 110, I don't know, and they have 4 essays. So really when I read those 5-minute stints, if the student didn't pop out to me quickly, I would have to move on. And sometimes I would skim just for the sake of time. I only had so much time. Then I worked at Caltech in their admissions office and was able to spend about 15 minutes on an application. So that was more of a quote-unquote holistic. I mean, UCs say they're holistic, but they don't really require letters of recommendation. Berkeley is starting to do a pilot program, but it's not formal, and they just can't read all of that. So, but Caltech does. They require 2 letters of recommendation, and still do, and had multiple essays, and we were looking at activities, and so that's about 15-20 minutes. To give you a sense, about 500 applications there. And then at Scripps College, I think it was kind of my favorite place to work. It was about half an hour per application. And that time and investment in the applicant, I think, really made the process that much more efficient. When we decided, it really was, I think, a good decision. So the time that admissions officers spend, it kind of varies. So one of the things I did as the owner and founder of Colledge is I've taken, my admissions experience is certainly informing, but one of the things that really informs the work here is that when we made decisions based on a committee decision. So we'd come together, and I'll talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of that, but we would sit around and we would talk about every applicant. So what I wanted to do was bring that mock admissions experience to families and students on this side of the table. So really our purpose is to help students make smart choices, to gain acceptance into their best fit colleges. But honestly, our bigger goal is to create foundational change in a young person's life. So it just sort of happens naturally. I don't necessarily say that to all the students that we're working with, but that's sort of my deeper goal. It's because college is sort of an entree to the rest of their lives, right? One thing that is kind of interesting that's happening in admissions right now, there's another thing that I've brought to this side is there's a team read. So UPenn has been at the forefront of this team read as the first read, and so that means 2 people. So I was telling you about how much time it took me. Right now UPenn has gotten it down to 3 minutes per application, but that's because 2 people are reading, so you have 2 sets of eyes, 2 brains, and they're able to quickly do almost like a mini committee, right? So anyway, but I'm not important here. You're the ones who came, right? And you came here tonight, I'm sure, because you care about your children, you care about their future, You know how important this transition is, and you really want them to thrive in college. I think finding the right fit college can make the difference in the rest of their lives. So when it comes to admissions decisions, we know it's more complicated than when we applied, right? But what does that look like? What does it mean? When all is said and done, some of the questions that might come up are what factors come into play? What are the admissions officers really looking for? I think that's sort of what causes a lot of anxiety. You okay? There's a wall right there. And what are the things that kind of make a difference in their read? A lot of people wonder, when is the optimal time to start planning or to start thinking about college admissions? I'm going to talk a little bit about 9th and 10th later, but in the presentation. But that's also sometimes, when is the optimal time? When is the right time for me to start this process? If any part of the presentation resonates with you and you want to learn more, I promise I'll be available for a phone consultation or even a sit-down hour consultation with you, with your child, so that we can really discuss your child's needs and their college fit interests. So before we go into the mind of admissions officer, I'm going to just touch on a couple of mistakes that a lot of students make in this process. A lot of students have unrealistic expectations about time, how much time it really takes. And after 9 years of doing this on the high school side, it's incredible how much time it takes. Really, you think about it, the recommendation, the National Association of College Admission Counseling recommends that we start talking about college in 6th grade. That doesn't mean obsessing, and it doesn't mean you know exactly where you're going to go. But it's really to start that dialogue and to keep that on the forefront of their minds in a healthy way early, and talk about financial aid, talk about expectations, talk about what it's going to take, so that the students in 7th, 8th, 9th can really start thinking ahead. But not enough planning. That's like the first thing that I notice quite often. Start planning too late, sometimes during senior year, and it just makes things more stressful. It's not impossible to get into college if you start in fall of senior year, but it can be very overwhelming for kids, and especially these days, kids compare themselves a lot to their peers, and if they're getting in, or it can be even crippling to see that they're not ahead of the game. Another mistake I notice students make is they don't do enough research. It's kind of hard to do research when you've never done it before, right? And especially when you don't know what you're looking for. But that college research is so important. It's imperative, in fact, because when students don't know anything about the colleges, when they haven't set foot on the college, they haven't reached out to admissions officers or anything like that, they're not going to know what they're looking for. They won't know what the college's values are, and they'll be basing their decisions on maybe hearsay or what they've heard their friends talk about, and not on real good research and information. And then the other thing is they can't really reflect back anything meaningful in the application. A third mistake I notice is, I say procrastination. Who's a procrastinator? I fully admit I can be a procrastinator, so I do a lot of calendaring, I do a lot of to-do lists for myself, I put a lot of post-it notes everywhere, as a parent and a business owner. Certainly procrastination, it perpetuates all of us. But I would say that, when students do procrastinate on the essay, they don't really know who they are in relation to the colleges, and they may not know how to reflect something meaningful back to them in an efficient way. So I have to tell you, the essay process takes a lot of time. It's kind of a new style of writing. For you students, it's a completely new way of writing. It's not an English paper. A personal essay is personal, and sometimes that can be hard to attempt on your own. So I really do believe in editorial help. You should never submit your essays without somebody looking at least that final draft. And the question might come up, how many essays do you have to write? Let's say a student is applying to 10 colleges. How many essays do you think they might need to write?
It's different for every college.
Ballpark, I would say 20.
Yeah.
20 essays for 10 colleges. That's probably an average, right? Some colleges require 10 essays. Some colleges require 1. Some you can just do one common application essay that's going to other places.
But they never match up, the Common App.
Right, exactly.
It's like you write the Common App one, but then you go to the college and they want a separate one.
Exactly. Those supplemental essays,
Yeah.
those are the ones that get, it's a lot. It's overwhelming.
Mhm.
So how many drafts do you think a student needs to do of one essay? Good answer. 3 to 4. I do recommend 3 to 4.
Each essay?
Each essay. Each one.
But if you apply
Yeah.
to the UCs, is that different?
UCs have 4 different
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
prompts
We didn't
or
do
4
it
different
last time.
essays.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can sometimes repurpose, but if you're writing 20, it's going to be, you have to really be fluid, right? And that's where we can help you with that. But how much time does it take you to write one essay? It can take a long time, right? And especially if you're alone in front of your computer, like, I don't know what to write, what do they want to hear? And you can get in your own way. So the essay procrastination is a really big mistake, is waiting, because it's scary. Another big mistake is no college guidance, right? So, if you're applying to college for the first time as a student, it's your first time, right? You don't know. Even if your older sibling went to college already, you watch them go through it. How is the college counseling support at your high school? Is your college counselor really the best person for your child? Sometimes parents feel like their child has a special talent or has a special need. I would say that's the majority of parents that are coming to us, is they feel that there's something missing and they want something a little bit more personal. And so all students, I do believe, need some kind of guidance, whether it's from the high school counselor or from a private consultant, but that's why we're here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How do you work then with because we absolutely love our counselor at our high school.
Great.
But she has
A ton of
a
students.
whole bunch of students
Yeah.
to deal with. So how do you guys team up?
Well, that's a really good question. It depends on the school and it depends on the counselor. So because I have such a long history of admissions, I have a lot of colleagues on the high school side.
Oh, good.
So all over this area, I would say I have very open, cordial relationships with the counselors. However, some counselors, even that I'm friends with, really don't discourage families from going to an outside private consultant. And so the most important thing we care about is the student, and that the high school counselor and the school environment is going to support that student in their college admissions aspirations, right? So it really depends. I do work with high school counselors when it's necessary, but this is all confidential, so it kind of depends on the situation. Yeah.
So maybe have the student manage
Yeah,
both relationships.
and that's exactly what we do,
Okay.
and we try to be very mindful of, if you're getting some information that's conflicting from the high school counselor, then trust the high school counselor.
Got it.
Sometimes with essay work, it's a little bit different because they just have too much to do in essay work, and that's where we can really support the student.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's take a tour inside of the mind. We as admissions officers, we have many factors that we can take into consideration, and some are more intangible, right? And some are more tangible. Some are more straightforward. So let me just back up and ask, do you guys know what an admissions officer is?
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell
It's
me?
the person that they help with reading like college essays and
Yeah,
getting people.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are going to read your applications, right? That's exactly right. They're both recruiters, like what I was talking about in my background, and they're also readers. That's the two things that they're doing. It's pretty much 24/7. Travel, read, and then start again. Travel, read. And they might be visiting your high school, and they definitely would come to some college fairs in the LA area. So anyway, the admissions offices are structured in a way where you're going to have, like when I worked at Scripps College, I had a territory. So typically, especially in private schools, we had territories that we were responsible for. So we would travel to those territories, and at Scripps, mine was Oregon and Washington.
Lucky.
Very cool. At Caltech, it was DC and Boston. And so we would travel to those territories, we'd visit in the fall, we'd do our spiels, do some fairs, maybe interview some students, and then we'd be reading those applications. So we would actually be taking notes, and sometimes, if it's it depends on the school, we might remember who those students were. Anyway, that person would be the first reader. So I would read all the applications first, make a vote or a decision, and then I'd pass it on to the next second reader. So typically that's how it's been working. We'll see how the future unfolds with this team read. But the second read would be like my superior, like a dean or director, who would then make their vote. Then the third round would be to sit around a table and discuss each applicant as a committee. So let's take a tour inside the mind. So left brain, we have selectivity. So left brain is, we're really looking at the quantifiable facts the school must consider. What would be those facts? The GPA, students' GPA, right? SAT scores or ACT scores.
Exceptional talent.
Sure.
In an area?
Not talent,
No.
just quantifiable facts, like
Oh.
how you can measure, sort of more black and white, right? On the management side, we would be looking at, admit rates from years past. We might look at, how many spots we have available. The enrollment management. That's left brain. Okay. So no negotiating, just left brain. Yeah, thinking. Okay. So then we have the right brain. I ask you, what do you see? How many see two faces facing each other? And how many?
Well, I saw the vase
Yes.
first.
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
So, and then how many of you see the vase? Yeah, so maybe you see both. Anyone else see anything else? Good, you never know.
Sure, crazy.
So this is really an illustration of the view is in the eye of the beholder.
Oh, it's a vase.
Yeah, exactly. Two people or two admissions officers can see the same exact applicant completely differently, right? So this is the more subjective side. This is where we've got a human impression of the applicant. Like the question, do you like the applicant? Are they likable? That's a really big foundational question. They're sort of, like I said, intangibles, like the activities. What kind of activities were they involved in? What are their essays reflecting? What's their major? What did they want to major in, and did they do things that kind of support that? Are they a leader in their community? What are the letters of recommendation saying about their work in the classroom? Have they demonstrated an interest in the college? Have they done an interview? A lot of private schools now do interviews, right? Another thing that's on this side of the brain, the right brain, is videos. Have you guys heard that they're offering videos, and some schools actually offer students to submit a 2-minute video instead of an essay. So it's like a video essay. Actually, Goucher has been one of the schools that really has been a leader in the video option and has really embraced it. TCU has introduced it, and in fact, recently shared that they preferred students who submitted a video over the students that didn't.
Wow.
So that really falls into those kind of more subjective areas. And that's why we're here. We're really trying to help you sift through all of these intangibles and what's going to matter and what's not. So I want to touch on something called angular qualities in the right brain. I like this image because you have the red popping out apple in the green apple bunch. When I was in admissions, and maybe before that, we were really interested in the well-rounded student. The student who was involved in a lot of clubs, maybe an athlete, tutored younger kids on the side, had a little part-time job in the summer, did a lot of different things, right? That's no longer the case. Admissions officers are really looking for students that stick out, that have some kind of angular or sharp or pointy edge to them, and maybe don't fit in perfectly. They have a little something different. So George was a student we worked with who had some, really interesting math, science, engineering interests. He kind of like oozed math out of his pores, always calculating, always thinking. This was a student we worked with on the East Coast, and and he just absolutely couldn't stop doing math. The other thing about George was that he was very competitive as a fencer. So he knew that he wanted to go to a STEM program, it's just he didn't know where, right? And so we kind of helped him identify colleges that would not only value his math, passion and his interest, but maybe would have him play on the fencing team. So that was George. Connor was a little bit different. Connor was a local student here. He was a social entrepreneur, had a nonprofit organization where he was amazing, brought water to third world countries through this nonprofit, did a fundraiser at his school. He also had a learning disability, and he had high anxiety, but he had this really interesting combination of a brilliant mind and then talents and then also anxiety. So we really needed to work with him on his college list that would fit his science interests, business interests, and as well and support his accommodations for learning disability. And he did need a lot of help developing his essays. So we worked with him very closely. And I'm pleased to say George was accepted to MIT, class of 2021. Connor accepted to USC Honors Program, class of 2021 as well. So sort of giving you an example of some of those angular, how we take that to another level. So let's go back to the left side of the brain, the admissions brain, and look at this part from the perspective of an admissions officer. So at Caltech, it was really important that all of our applicants, or all of the students that we're admitting, had 800s on their math score, right? Or 36, close to 36 on the ACT math score. We were definitely looking for calculus. Did they take calculus? If it was offered, AP Calc AB or AP Calc BC, maybe linear algebra, multivariable equations, maybe beyond the high school level. We were looking at maybe sometimes they would take like the AMC or the AMY test. If you don't know what those are, don't worry, you're not a math person. So those math exams, subject tests, we were required to subject test at Caltech, so pretty close to 800 in those as well. Sometimes college level courses, but those are sort of just cut and dry. Did they do it? What did they do? Like we're measuring, right? Very much like a first step. We had a student actually who was very much left side of the admission brain, or left side type student, and he was looking at physics. We don't just work with STEM students, but his passion was for physics. He worked with a mentor. He was also a local student, and we actually thought that some of the UK schools were a good fit for him. So we had him look at Cambridge, and we also helped him understand those are earlier deadlines to make sure he manages his time well. And then we also coached him before he went. He actually had to fly to Cambridge and actually take an exam in front of a faculty member. So it's very different. They're UK systems, but that's what it is. It's very cut and dry. So it's a non-feeling, non-emotional, just almost impersonal read, frankly. But even at Caltech, we still wanted evidence of scientific passion beyond the classroom. So we were looking for some things like evidence of tinkering or robotics club, or maybe some science experiments, scientific research, sometimes science fair, or 2 or 3. Didn't really matter what their awards were. It just was like, how do you express yourself scientifically, or in math, or in engineering? What are the ways in which you pursue this outside of the classroom? At Scripps College, that was another great example of right side of the admissions brain. It was more about our intuition about applicants, more touchy-feely, if you will. After we would interview the young women, we really felt like we got to know them, and sometimes there was something they were talking about that we could tell they had potential, and we really wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Even they didn't have to have 700, 800 on their math. That wasn't the most important thing to us. In fact, those students who had all those quantifiable data pieces, but didn't have any of the passion or the more, I guess you could say, right side, creative side, we weren't as interested in. But we took potential into consideration, and that was a good example of right side of admission brain. Anna was a student we worked with last year, And she loved world politics. She was kind of like all over the place when she came to us. She was so interested in learning and so passionate about so many things that she kind of had this insatiable appetite for leadership and taking on more, and she couldn't say no. And she kind of got burnt out, but she kept going. We're just like, oh my gosh, how do you do this, you know? So she really wanted to change the world. She had such a deep desire to do big things, great things, and she felt, you know, just called. It was a rare kind of a student to work with, but she was extraordinary. And so we helped her kind of narrow down her focus with majors, especially. So really think about economics and politics. Those are kind of the two that she's focused on. And we helped her simplify her ideas for her essay work. So like each of her essays we worked on, she had an intro that was about a book as it related to the prompt. Like she was brilliant. But we really wanted her to kind of hone down and simplify. So these are the schools that we helped her apply to: Brandeis, American University, Smith, University of Rochester, Colgate, Lewis and Clark. She had several UCs on her list: Wellesley, Reed, and Dartmouth. And then she was denied to nothing, waitlisted at Colgate and Berkeley and Dartmouth, and then she was accepted to Brandeis, Wellesley, Reed, American, all these schools. So she was kind of in a different situation where she was admitted so many places. That stressed her out too. So we kind of had to help her.
Don't feel sorry for her. We really don't feel sorry for her.
Yeah, she was kind of a machine, you know. We really had to rein her in. But of course she got the results that she wanted, which was lots of options. She was doing an all-inclusive, a 10-school all-inclusive with us. And so she ended up getting into and going to Wellesley, which I think is the perfect fit for her. And in fact, we had an alumni brunch over the holiday break, and she was just glowing. I mean, I just couldn't believe how happy she was. And it is the perfect place for her. And that kind of intellectual curiosity and that, you know, crazy wanting to take over the world, you know, that was the best place for her. So in order for a final decision to be made, you really do need, as an admissions officer, to have that right brain and left brain connection. And that's really the committee discussions that I was talking about. This is where in the room where it happens. So admissions committees can be extremely difficult. Some admissions officers like data. Some care about diversity. Some focus on athletes. Some are interested in international students. Maybe some want more athletes at their college. So everyone has a little bit of a different personality that they bring to the table, right? And that's how it should be. And it's very unique. Our U.S. system of college admissions is very unique. Like I said, Cambridge is, you know, other countries, they do it completely straight up, you know, with the data. But the committee decision is really using both sides of the brain, you know, together as a group, and it can take a long time. So the discussions can get kind of heated. And I have to be honest, you know, sometimes we would grapple with these decisions, lose sleep over them. You know, we did know if you know, these decisions are going to change a student's life, right? So it was hard. And then after the committee would meet, they would do something like at this time, March 8th, right around now, they would do something called shaping. So this is something that management does, like deans and directors. And shaping is when, after the committee is decided, then you have your long list of admits, denies, wait lists, whatever. And then you go back and you see, oh, there's actually only these many spots available. You have like the real hard numbers, conversation with the president or whatever, whoever's tracking that. And then they have to shape the class. So they might have like admitted you initially, but then they have to eliminate at that last round. So it could be, you could have gone through many iterations, your first read, second read, you know, committee decision, and then shaping. So what do you need to do? You need to research which side of the brain the admission office uses for each college. And how do you do that? I recommend tours. Usually they're led by students. Ask a lot of questions. As parents, I would hang back and let your child be in the front asking more of the questions. I would recommend all admissions offices have information sessions, usually attached to the tours, go to the information session, because that's usually admissions officers. So you get the tour guide of a student and admissions officer. And you can ask those people as many questions as you want. Typically, they'll give out their email address. And I think you need to pursue deeper research, right, beyond that. So how do you know what admissions officers are looking? That's kind of the answer. I have a pop quiz for you guys. How many, let's see, who can name 3 small liberal arts colleges?
Oh, why did well, the Claremont colleges.
Yes, one of them. Tell me which one.
Oh, I went there. So Scripps,
Okay,
Spencer,
Scripps.
Pomona,
Amana.
even Harvey Mudd, right?
Harvey Mudd.
Yeah, and CMC,
Mhm.
and the graduate school.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Those are small liberal arts colleges.
Yeah.
Good. You got 5 stars.
But I went there, so I cheated.
Who can tell me 3 public universities?
UCLA, Berkeley, Oregon.
Oregon. Great.
Long Beach,
Very good.
Yeah.
How about another question for the audience? What's the most? Does anyone know what the most expensive college is?
USC.
No, actually.
Really? No, it's not RISD.
No.
I know it's an art school,
Harvard.
right? It's not an art school?
No.
Oh.
No. It's actually local. It's a Los Angeles County school.
What?
It's in 2017. It was Harvey Mudd.
Oh.
$69,717 a year. Number 2, close behind that, Columbia. Columbia at $68,405. They're rising fast, so it's hard to keep up.
Wow.
Right? I don't know how far we're gonna go, but anyway. How about, who knows what the most selected college is in the U.S.?
Stanford.
It's actually tied Stanford and Harvard. Very good. Very good guess. So the more you know, the more informed you will be, and the more effective you will be in your applications and essays. Okay, so first step, I think you want to make your college list, right? You want to choose colleges that are the best fit for you. And how do you start? There's 3,500, 4,000 colleges in the U.S. So what are some things that you can do to narrow it down?
Location.
Good. Location? Very good. Size? Great. Sophie?
Programs.
Programs or majors? Great. Cost might be a factor, right? Yeah?
She wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah. It doesn't even work about that. Right.
ask the parents.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
number 1.
Right.
How do you,
not a plane.
how do you even figure out what
Yeah, good
type
question.
of colleges would be a right fit?
So, I mean, who is your child? Start with your
I
child.
don't even know.
That's
That's the problem.
That's where we come in. We can help them with that.
I don't think she
What
knows
do they
either.
want out of the college?
I don't think she knows either.
Right. Well, she's still pretty young.
Yeah.
So we start with a list, and I do believe college planning works. I see it again and again and again. We have, in our services, we have one-on-one consulting, and we have these great essay boot camps. The one-on-one consulting really allows us to partner with the student directly, and we have time. That's one of the things that's so luxurious. If we didn't have time in admissions to get to know the students really, it's just read the, can you please apply to our school, and then we read the applications. High school counselors have time, depends on the school, how much time they have. We have all the time in the world here. So it can really help shape a student's choices with college list, essay work, preparing them for the interviews, thinking about, test planning with colleges in mind. I think a lot of parents are very misguided with test planning, because they think it just get the highest score. We'll just, right? And that's fine. I think that's great to just push for the highest score, but we want to kind of put it in a context of which colleges are we really looking at, right? And so that it can be something that's measurable and attainable and within a little bit of control of the student. So test planning with colleges in mind, and then looking at their strengths, really looking at their inherent strengths as a young human being, and also planning for some scholarships, potential scholarships and financial aid. The essay boot camps are basically half-day intensives that we provide to our students, where students really have the time and the space to write with us. So that means that we're doing some great exercises in advance, and then they get time and space in our offices here. We kind of limit the amount of students, and our essay specialists are giving them feedback right away so they can keep going. And typically the students who come will finish at least one draft, if not two sometimes. And it really makes a big difference in terms of, finishing, like, our students are typically finishing those 4 UC essays in the summer and the one Common App essay before school starts in the fall. So that makes it a lot less stressful in the fall to have those things done. And then, so in our plans, we offer a 10-school all-inclusive and a 5-school all-inclusive, depending on what your needs are. But those all-inclusive really, those plans make time for all the things that come up. And we want to be sure that we have enough time to meet your child's needs, their unique individual needs, all the way through the process. So it's usually about an 18-month plan from January junior year, February, to May 1, the following senior year. We take 30 clients each year, and we're a very small boutique company, and we are filling up this year. So who we are, we have, like I mentioned earlier, a team approach that I kind of have modeled after the admissions committee team. Each consultant has an admissions background, or they have essay writing in their background, and have coached other students beyond our work and bring their expertise to the table. So what we have is, so the team approach is each student who works with us gets a team lead. So that team lead has admissions experience, and they get an essay specialist who really slows down that writing process for them and opens them up, identifies the best sort of strengths that they can develop, and then I'm on everyone's team. So they get 3 people, and they get the benefit of my expertise in overseeing the process. And we do meet regularly as a team to discuss each student outside of meetings. So, I try to visit about 30 colleges a year. Even though I worked in college admissions, it's still really important to keep relationships going on the college side, so that I know what to expect. And also, just for your information, if you want to follow us on social media, usually we'll post like a photo album and a little blurb on what kind of student might do well here. So please feel free, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We have lots of fun stuff up there. Okay, so Carter was a student who worked with us a couple of years ago. Carter was an interesting kid. He really excelled in the classroom. You can see based on his profile, he had a GPA of 4.0, weighted of 4.8. He had a critical reading score of 680 and a math score of 800, writing 710, subject test in bio 750, math 800, and physics 770. A lot of activities, a lot of involvement, but you can kind of see he is pretty well-rounded. He has an Eagle Scout award, National Honor Society, swim, water polo, and he did this great USC engineering summer program, a volunteer at the Huntington Hospital, Red Cross violin photography. So he's like got a lot going on, right? Do you have a question?
So wait, what do you mean by weighted GPA? Like, is that if you take like honors and AP?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So they give an extra point to those grades in those classes. Yeah. And then
aren't fewer colleges weighting now in the calculation?
fewer.
It seemed like when we did the application, they kind of threw out the weighted part. But maybe we didn't apply to regular, we probably didn't. We didn't apply to UCs.
You mean when you applied?
No, my daughter, my older one.
Oh, okay. It depends on the college, but we would
Okay.
recalculate the GPA.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in admissions. Yeah, it sort of depends on the college, but
Okay, yeah,
at the UCs, they do kind of a machine. Yeah.
okay.
And then, so anyway, he was very much left brain student. He had some great essays. Do you have questions?
How important are like sports to like colleges?
Really, only if they're important to you is it important to an admissions office. It depends on you. It depends on the student. So it's not that important if it's not that important to you. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
You don't have to be in a sport to get into college.
It doesn't help, I think she's asking.
only if you like it.
Right.
So
If
you,
you're
you
passionate.
want to think about it like, not what the colleges want, what do I want? Right? And that's where we can help her, you know, really help. Yeah. Which things does she like? Does she want to do? How can she develop it? So when Carter started working with us, he actually wanted to go into engineering, and the only thing that he had on his activities list was that USC engineering program. But he was so inspired that summer before senior year, after taking that program, that he knew he wanted to do engineering, and he wanted aerospace. And he was convinced that this is like the path for him. So we really were excited about him, and certainly wanted to honor his impulse. But he didn't have those intangibles, and he was looking at MIT and Caltech and UCs. And we kind of wanted to back up a little bit and think more broadly. So in his case, we recommended a few Ivy League schools because of his profile. We don't always do that with students, but in his case we did. We had him look into, we really listened to him, and we do this whole listening phase with the family. We wanted to understand his specialness, and we felt like it was beyond engineering, even though he knew he wanted to do that. So we had him visit MIT, we had him visit Harvard, and we had him visit Cornell. And we taught him how to visit. We taught him what to look for. And so we gave him kind of more of a strategy. We had him do his resume, we helped him polish that up. We did an interview prep so that, because he was going to meet with some admissions officers. And so when he went to MIT, he actually realized that it wasn't as interesting as he thought it would be, given, you know, his excitement. And so it's great that he discovered that early on. It just didn't feel like the right place for him. Harvard he loved, and he did end up applying to Harvard as well. But Cornell he loved most of all. And the reason was because the director of admissions for engineering met with him, talked to him about why it's important to have more of a broad-based engineering foundation versus identifying aerospace too quickly, and encouraged him to apply to Cornell. They had a great meeting, and he came home all excited. And one of the things the director said to him was, if you want to apply early decision, please let me know. And so he was like, I don't know, should I do that? We kind of helped him sort all that out. He did end up wanting to apply early, and he was accepted. So that early decision is binding. He was in an all-inclusive package with us, but once he made that decision to apply early, he had to go.
Unless the financial aid didn't come through, right? No?
Yes, I guess that's the only
Okay.
thing. But typically, that's not how we would counsel a family.
No,
Yeah.
but it's binding with the student.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
It's binding with the parent too. You sign it, it's a legal
Right,
agreement, it's a
yeah,
legal document.
right.
The counselor at the school has to sign it, so it's
Right.
kind of a serious decision. You really want to make sure that's what you want. It really helps the colleges, because when they get their best and their brightest students, then they're done, right? They have their class. So, yeah.
Out of curiosity, when did he go to Cornell to visit?
He went in the summer.
Not in the winter.
Yes, he went in the summer.
That was so my
That's so
point. I was
true.
just thinking with the junior daughter
Yeah.
where it's spring,
Yeah.
how far along was he and polished and ready to go talk to someone?
Yeah, it was later in the summer. Before school started in the fall, that's when he went.
Okay.
So there weren't as many kids on the campus,
Sure.
right? Because it was not a regular school day, college day, but he was able to meet with the most important people who were going to make the decision.
Yes.
So it was worth it,
Okay.
you know, for him.
Good.
Yeah. Another student we worked with, Amy, she was very different. Amy was a joy, absolute joy to work with. She had a 3.3 unweighted GPA. Her critical reading score, you can see 620, math 530. And she had a few extracurricular activities, but really it was just ceramics. Like, she just only wanted to create ceramics. She had these beautiful little pots. She had a series. She was making those like really cool like sneakers. She did the beading on the sneakers. I mean, and she like really like spent all of her time doing this outside of schoolwork. So she kind of had a tricky situation because she was highly creative, and she really didn't know where to apply. Should she apply to art school, or should she apply to small liberal arts colleges? So we worked with Amy also in a 10-school all-inclusive plan. And she actually had certainly the academic component. You can see that she was strong academically. She wasn't weak by any means, but we wanted her to shine in the art schools and in the portfolio. And we knew, my background in the arts admissions world was able to inform sort of how they're going to look at the portfolio a lot more heavily in her case than they would the GPA. As long as she has sort of a minimum GPA, they're fine. A minimum test score. So Puget Sound, small liberal arts, this is where she applied. Pratt, Emily Carr, some of these you might not know. Syracuse University, Parsons, PNCA, RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, SFAI, San Francisco Art Institute, Moore College of Art and Design, and Montserrat College of Art. And she really did a great job with her writing. It was kind of labor intensive with her because we're looking at, not only did she have to submit applications and regular essays, but she also had to do writing for every piece of art she submitted. And then she had to put together her portfolio. And then it was slightly different requirements for every art school. It was we were working with her every day, I feel like. But she was just a joy and, what an inspiration. So she ended up getting into and going to RISD. That really was her top choice. And she had done a summer program there, which really helped her understand RISD. We also coached her on, there's something called the National Portfolio Day Association, so we had her go to that, and that's where art school admissions folks will review portfolios and give feedback. But she wrote this really great essay about, when she was little, she walked into Crate and Barrel, she wanted to touch everything, and just really vivid image of, reaching out, and her mom's, don't touch, and she just and she talked about just how I wanted to hold the cups and hold it, and it just so spoke to, the ceramics that came out of that impulse. So it was wonderful. I have this great checklist that I'm giving to you all tonight, so take this with you. This is kind of outlining our work, but to kind of sum it up, we're not just checking boxes here. When we're working with students, we're really getting to know them. You can see in 9th and 10th, it's a little bit lighter. So we do offer, I mentioned the 5-school and the 10-school all-inclusive. For younger students, we just work hourly. And I work with all the 9th and 10th graders myself, because we really don't take on all 9th graders and 10th graders that come to us. We are looking for that motivation and to make sure that they're really ready to do this. But really to explore extracurriculars in 9th grade, we're maybe talking a little bit about summer, how to use the summer, but you don't have to do a college program necessarily. You can if you want to. But we talk about visiting colleges, maybe one local college. We're really trying to help those younger students think far ahead and get ready. We're going to do academic planning for the 4 years of high school as well in those younger years. 10th grade, it picks up a little bit. 10th grade, we do a lot of planning for the test year and academic planning for what kind of curriculum they're going to focus on in 11th grade, because 11th grade is probably, is the hardest year, right? Because you're increasing your rigor in the classroom and you've got your tests to take. And so that sort of takes up all the mental space you have, right? And then 12th grade, you're really it's showtime. That's when your applications are due. So we just do light here, and then we really work closely with our 11th and 12th graders on the process. So like I said, I visit about 30 colleges. I really want to stay on top of trends. We actually, over the 9 years, have helped about 250 students get accepted to one of their top 3 choices. We have time, so we spend a lot of time on the education of the process. We do have these wonderful free workshops that are integrated into the service as well. But we try to make the process easier and less stressful, because we know how important this is to you and how important this moment is for your child, and certainly finding the right fit college. So why do parents sometimes seek us out? Sometimes, like I said earlier, the parents of 9th and 10th want something a little bit more proactive. They're thinking ahead. And so it can be really helpful to just lay out a plan and they know where they're going. you know, maybe they have a special interest, like I said before too, they have a talent in math, or they have a talent in the arts, or maybe in writing, and they want to kind of present those talents to the colleges in a compelling way down the line. Sometimes parents are looking for help because they have tension with their child. You know, their child is moving in a new direction, and they sort of don't have that hold on them anymore. And they, you know, I certainly can identify with that as a parent of even a 4th and 5th grader. The social kind of takes over, and the peer influence is heavy. And so, you know, they're looking for a sort of an impartial party to partner with their child to inform the process. And really, all parents that come to us want the best for their child and for their future, and they know that this moment is the time to take action. So maybe you have never been through this process before. Maybe you've, as a parent, been through it with an older child, but maybe your second child is different, or your third child is different. So I'm happy to talk to you beyond tonight. If you would like to sit down, I promise to be available to you, so we can kind of talk through the details of your child's needs and how we would work together. So you can see Jamie. Jamie is going to be over here. She has a calendar available for just some phone consultation, so we can just get on the phone and talk a little bit about pricing and talk about what your child's needs are and what your needs are for them. But it's been a pleasure to meet you all tonight. Thank you for staying so late. I hope that you've learned something about college admissions, and I hope you will consider working with us. In the back of that little notebook I gave you is my card, so you can feel free to reach out to me at any time. Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Help yourself to water, anything on your way out. Jamie right here will be able to sign you up if you want to for a phone call, and I'll be hanging out for a little bit.